Up on Network Africa. Algeria's president-elect Abdelmajid Tebboune is sworn in as the country's new president. Sudan marks 1 year since protests began that ousted Omar al-Bashir. Plus, lawyers for the estranged wife of Zimbabwe's vice president, Mary Mubaiwa, say she is too sick to flee the country even as she faces charges of attempted murder. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Welcome. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in Algeria, where a former Prime Minister Abdelmajid Tebboune has been sworn in as the country's new president. Mr. Tebboune took the oath of office at a ceremony televised live on state TV from the Palace of Nations in the capital, Algiers. He won the 12 December election with 58% of the vote, with turnout reported at nearly 40% despite mass protests. Mr. Tebboune is a member of Algeria's long-standing governing National Liberation Front, FLN, that thousands of citizens are protesting against. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Algiers last Friday, chanting slogans against Mr. Tebboune, who was a loyalist of ousted leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Sudan is marking 1 year since the beginning of protests that led to the ouster of longtime ruler Omar al-Bashir, with a week of festivities. Now, the celebrations have been organized by the transitional government and the protest movement as tribute to the thousands of demonstrators. In the capital, Khartoum, festivities are planned in several districts, particularly at the city's Freedom Square, which was renamed in honor of the protesters. The protests were sparked by soaring bread prices in the central town of Atbara and swept across the country, and by April had toppled Bashir, who was in power for 3 decades. This month, he was convicted of corruption and sentenced to 2 years in a social reform facility. Meanwhile, a prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, Fatou Bensouda, says that Sudan must ensure that the 5 ICC suspects of war crimes, including former President Omar al-Bashir, are brought to justice. Addressing the Security Council, she says the office is not aware of any concrete information suggesting that the suspects in the Darfur situation are currently subject to domestic investigation or prosecution. For his part, Sudanese Ambassador Omar Mohamed Ahmed Siddiq said the transitional government is fully committed to fighting impunity. Al-Bashir, Abdelrahim Hussein, Ahmad Haroun, Alif Shkubash and Abdallah Banda are all wanted by the ICC for crimes committed in Darfur.
Sudan must ensure that the 5 ICC suspects in the Darfur situation are brought to justice without undue delay, either in a courtroom in Sudan or in The Hague. In this way, this Council's referral of the Darfur situation to my office can finally yield tangible results in court for the victims this Council sought to protect. And progress can be made towards resolving this Council's referral of the Darfur situation to the ICC.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me also...
The office is not aware of any concrete information suggesting that the suspects in the Darfur situation are currently subject to domestic investigation or prosecution for the same criminal conduct alleged in the relevant ICC arrest warrants. Unless and until Sudan can demonstrate to ICC judges that it is willing and able to genuinely investigate and prosecute the Darfur suspects for the crimes alleged in their respective arrest warrants, then these cases will remain admissible before the ICC. Sudan has a legal duty to cooperate with my office pursuant to this Council's Resolution 1593 and the jurisprudence of the Appeals Chamber of the ICC. Cooperation with the ICC would clearly demonstrate to this Council and the international community writ large that Sudan is committed to achieving justice for the victims in the Darfur situation, and that it has followed through on its declared commitments and assurances with visible and practical steps.
Joining us now is Dr. Okwi Okpala, an African Affairs analyst, to discuss more on this. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Now, it has been 1 year since the protests began. How much progress would you say the country, Sudan, has made?
Thank you.
I was asking that it's been 1 year since the protests began. How much progress would you say Sudan has made, if you can hear me?
Well, I think they have made reasonable progress, although some things they are not doing as much, apparently, because of the huge expectation gap. It's not possible for everybody to say that the transitional government has done so much, but in reality, considering what they've situation they made on ground, they've made substantial progress. Of course, there's a lot of progress from what Sudan was about a year ago.
Yeah, and quite a lot has changed since the ousting of former President al-Bashir. The transitional government marked 100 days yesterday since its swearing in, although some citizens are still divided between praise for the interim government and criticism for slow progress on some issues. Why do you think that is? I was asking why you think some citizens, because the citizens are still divided between praise for the interim government and criticism for slow progress on some issues. I'm asking, why do you think the citizens are still divided?
I think, well, of course, even before there are several organizations and several institutions that were pushing for the change of government, and even after the fall of the last dictator, a negotiation took a long time. The country is healing, but then of course the healing process is slow, and the expectation is so much from the citizens that immediately we get rid of the dictator, things will start moving very smoothly. Often it's not like it doesn't work always like that. Even from South Africa, and when apartheid was the apartheid regime was overthrown, people expected that things would move so rapidly, but it didn't move so rapidly. And so I think the disappointment is more or less because of the expectation gap.
Okay, now looking ahead, the transitional government have a little over 3 years until elections can be held. Do you think this power will be shared? Because the military now is in control, and for the last 18 months of the 3 years, the civilian government will take power. Do you think there will be elections by the time it's time?
Well, I believe there will be election, but it cannot be taken for granted. I think the citizenry, the civil society, have to continue to keep vigilant. Eternal vigilance is the price we pay for for democracy and for human rights. So if it cannot be, yes, except the citizens continue to agitate, continue to push the government and the military towards, ensuring that the elections are held. And not only that the elections are held, because if you hold the election that will be rigged, that will be manipulated, it's as good as not holding an election. In fact, it's even worse than that. So I think the citizenry, the international community will continue to be vigilant, to continue to monitor and push the government towards doing the right thing. Unless that is done, nobody is sure.
All right, Dr. Okwi Okpala, we'll just have to wait and see. African Affairs analyst, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Now, moving on, a Ugandan court has ruled that the country failed its international obligations by not arresting Sudan's ex-president Omar al-Bashir when he visited the country in 2016 and 2017. Bashir has an International Criminal Court arrest warrant against him for genocide and crimes against humanity. Signatories to the ICC, including Uganda, are obliged to arrest him if he enters their territory. But Bashir visited Uganda on 2 occasions in 2016 and 2017 without being detained. World leaders were joined by partners from the private and development sector at the first ever Global Refugee Forum, where a number of significant pledges were made in support of refugee programs. Together, the companies pledged $250 million towards education and training in jobs and entrepreneurship to aid refugees in becoming more self-sufficient.
The special advisor and head of the Migration Initiative of the Inter-American Development Bank says the bank's board of governors approved the use of $100 million of its grant facilities to support countries that have received a number of refugees of migrants in the last 3 years that exceed 0.5% of their populations. These include Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Guyana, Panama, Peru, and Trinidad and Tobago.
The Inter-American Development Bank own resources will be blended with additional grants from donors and partners and co-financing from public and private donors, expecting to leverage a total of $1 billion in concessional financing for a period of the next 3 to 4 years.
Inca Group, Inter-ICARE Group, and ICARE Foundation announced that by 2022, they will support 2,500 refugees through job training and language skills initiatives in 300 ICARE stores and units in 30 countries. These commitments are boosted by the ICARE's foundation commitment of €100 million in program grants over the next 5 years. The Vodafone Foundation made a commitment to provide a high-quality digital education to more than 500,000 young refugees with expansion of the Instant Network Schools program.
This year, the LEGO Foundation is awarding a $100 million grant to a consortium led by the International Rescue Committee to work alongside host governments to improve education outcomes for approximately 800,000 pre-primary and primary school-aged children living in refugee settings in East Africa.
International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach said the committee would promote and ensure access for all refugees to safe and inclusive sporting facilities, increase availability and sport-based initiatives for refugees and hosting communities, and promote and facilitate participation of refugees in sporting competitions at all levels.
We know that for children and young people in particular who are uprooted by war or persecution, sport is much more than a leisure activity. For refugees, sport is an opportunity to be included and protected, a chance to heal, develop and grow.
The three-day forum ended on December the 18th. The UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency and the government of Switzerland jointly hosted this global meeting.
Mozambique's police boss has admitted that a stolen police vehicle and uniforms are being used by Islamist insurgents to carry out attacks in the gas-rich northern province of Cabo Delgado. Photos of the insurgents parading the police car and uniforms have been doing the rounds on social media. Police Chief Bernardino Rafael on Wednesday said investigations were ongoing to establish how the group had got hold of the equipment. He said the insurgents had since touched the vehicle. The group, locally known as Al-Shabaab, but which has no known association with the Somalia-based jihadist group of the same name, has been carrying out sporadic attacks in the region for more than 2 years. Well, still to come on the program. The UK-Nigeria Tech Hub organizes a pitching competition for Nigerian women entrepreneurs in technology. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.